This guide covers where you can find every passive skill point and permanent stat bonus in the Path of Exile 2 campaign. If you're already familiar with Acts 1 to 3, and if you're looking for information on Act 4 and the Interludes, then use the timestamps below to skip ahead. Starting in Act 1, the first stat bonus is found in Clearfell. Look for Bera of the Rotten Pack and defeat her to gain plus 10% cold resistance. Second is the Crowbell in the Hunting Grounds. Defeating this boss will grant you 2 weapon passive skill points. Connected to the Hunting Grounds is Freythorn, where after clearing multiple rituals, you'll face off against the King of the Mist to gain plus 30 to maximum spirit. After defeating the King of the Mist, move on to the Ogum farmlands, look for Una's home. Inside, you'll find Una's loot box. Open it, loot Una's loot, and return the loot to Una in town to complete the Lost Loot quest, and for 2 weapon passive skill points. Next, if this is your first character in a league, to unlock the salvage bench, you'll need to search for Renly smithing tools in the Ogum village. Lastly, on the first floor of the Ogum manor, search for and defeat Candlemass for plus 20 to maximum life. It's worth noting that Candlemass is usually found after the first walkway, but in rare situations can actually spawn beforehand. Moving on to Act 2, and starting in Keth, you have 2 objectives. The first is to defeat Kabbalah Constrictor Queen for 2 weapon passive skill points. Afterwards, in the same zone, defeat as many enemies as possible in search of a Kabbalah clan relic. If you don't find the relic in Keth, continue progressing forward, as it can also drop in either the Lost City or the Buried Shrines. Similarly, in the Mastodon Badlands or the Bone Pits, defeat enemies until you can find the Sun Clan relic. With both relics acquired, in the Valley of the Titans, while opening the 3 ancient seals, search for a waypoint, where nearby you'll find a relic altar. Place the previously found relics inside the relic altar to gain plus 1 charm slot, and for a choice between 30% increased charm charges gained or 30% increased charm effect duration. If you'd like to change your buff later, you can always return to the altar and select a different option. Traveling to Deshar, search for and interact with the Fallen Dekra to receive the final letter. Return the final letter to Shambrin in town for 2 weapon passive skill points. Lastly, search for and interact with the Sisters of Garrican's Shrine for plus 10% lightning resistance. Moving on to Act 3, and beginning in the Jungle Ruins, search for and defeat the Mighty Silver Fist for 2 weapon passive skill points. The Mighty Silver Fist is a hard-hitting physical damage boss with slams and rolling abilities that are especially lethal if your character is low on armor. Afterwards, in the same zone, search for the entrance to the Venom Crypts, located near a waypoint. Once inside, search for an interactable corpse to acquire Corpse Snake Venom. Return the Venom to Servi in town for a choice between 25% increased stun threshold, 30% increased elemental ailment threshold, or 25% increased mana regeneration rate. It's worth noting, this decision is permanent and cannot be changed. If you're unsure what to select, consider referencing a guide, or leaving the decision to later. Next up, in the Azak Bog, search for and defeat Ignagduk the Bog Witch for the Gemrot Skull, which can be consumed for plus 30 to maximum spirit. Traveling to Chikani's Machinarium, before progressing to Chikani's Sanctum, search for an additional small soul core to unlock Blackjaw the Remnant's Arena. Defeat Blackjaw, and consume the Flame Core for plus 10% fire resistance. Moving onward, if this is your first character in a league, then travel to the Molten Vault, the home of Mektal the Forge Master. Defeat Mektal for the Hammer of Kamasa, and return it to Oswald in town to unlock the Reforging Bench. Lastly, after traveling to the past, in either Utsal or Agarat, defeat larger enemies to acquire a sacrificial heart. Then, in the top right of Agarat, search for an altar and a sacrificial dagger. Loot the dagger, place the sacrificial heart, and stab it to gain 2 weapon passive skill points. Progressing to Act 4, sail to the Isle of Kin and defeat the Blind Beast for 2 weapon passive skill points. To clear the zone faster, search for and interact with the Voltaxic Spire, buffing your character with Sulfite Intoxication, providing increased movement speed, additional elemental resistance, but most importantly, more damage. Also in the Isle of Kin, you find the fossilized formation for Lesser Jeweler's Orb, and can slay this rare beast for an uncut support gem. Moving on to the Kedge Bay, search for the abandoned ship secret and open the rare chest for another Lesser Jeweler's Orb. Next, in the abandoned prison, slay monsters until you find a chapel key, then search for the chapel, use the key, and interact with the Goddess of Justice for a choice between 30% increased life recovery from flasks or 30% increased mana recovery from flasks. Again, if you'd like to change your choice later, you can always return to the altar and select a different option. Afterwards, in the Eye of Hinakora, near the end of the zone, search for the Silent Hall and pay your respects to receive plus 5% to maximum mana. Then, in the next zone, the Halls of the Dead, search for the following tests and defeat the waves of enemies. Upon completion, you will be rewarded with a consumable tattoo, providing either 5 strength or 5% fire resist, 5 dexterity or 5% lightning resist, and 5 intelligence or 5% cold resist. Continue progressing through the Halls of the Dead in search of Yama the White. Defeat Yama, progress ahead to the Trial of the Ancestors, and speak to Navali at the top of the zone for 2 weapon passive skill points. If you're having difficulty with this fight, then review the Act 4 boss guide, linked in the description. Before leaving Act 4 in Erastus, after escaping the ambush and before fighting Torvian, Hand of the Savior, search for the morning and evening bells to acquire 3 regals and 3 exalted orbs. The morning bell is located in the town square, whereas the evening bell is located at the cliffside. Traveling onward to the first interlude, the Curse of Holton, make your way to Holton and search for a ferryman, which sells a tab of greater runes at approximately 2,000 gold each. You'll need around 20,000 gold or more to purchase every rune, so make sure you've been vendoring rare items beforehand. Shortly after, in Wolvenhold, search for and defeat Oswin the Dreadwarden for 2 weapon passive skill points. Jumping ahead to Interlude 2, the Stolen Barria. In the first zone, the Kari Crossing, there are 2 objectives to complete. First, search for the Skull Maw Stairway, then clear ahead, defeat the rare, and loot the Molten One's gift, which can be consumed for plus 5% to maximum life. Then return to Kari's Crossing and search for a checkpointed boss arena as so. Enter the arena, defeat the Devourer and Scorpion, then return to town and speak to Risu for 2 weapon passive skill points. It's worth noting that this zone is gigantic, which is an understatement. Fully clearing the zone and finding the entrance to each connected area might take a while. Now, once you've completed your vacation in the Kari Crossing, for a quick gear upgrade, progress south towards the Salkari Sanctuary. Inside, search for 2 Barrias which can be placed in opposing altars, rewarding you with 2 opportunities for a rare ring, amulet, or jewel. Progressing north to Kima, search for Orbalis Pillar, providing a temporary bonus that can be changed at any point. Next, in the Kima Reservoir, defeat monsters, obtain the drops of water, and refill the sacred wells for a guaranteed Exalted and Alchemy Orb. Moving on to the third and final interlude, Doriani's Contingency. In the Crier Village, defeat Lithara for plus 40 spirit. If you're having difficulty with this boss fight, refer to the interlude boss guide linked below. Next, in the Howling Caves, search for and defeat the Abominable Yeti for 2 weapon passive skill points. The Abominable Yeti is mechanically similar to the Mighty Silverfist from Act 3, so if you're low on physical damage mitigation, pro tip, just don't get hit. Traveling ahead, in the Crier Peaks, speak to Elder Maddox for 1 free unique item, functionally the same as the Nameless Seer in PoE1. If playing a trade league and you're unsure what to select, consider searching for each item on the trade site to learn its relative value. To receive the final 2 skill points, your task is to complete all 3 interludes and progress to endgame. To summarize, after completing the Path of Exile 2 campaign, you should have gained the following: 24 weapons at passive points, plus 100 to maximum spirit, plus 20 to maximum life, 5% increase to maximum life, 5% increase to maximum mana, 10% to all elemental resistance, 4 permanent stat buffs that cannot be changed whatsoever, found from Survey in Act 3, and the 3 ancestral tattoos in Act 4. Lastly, there are 3 temporary buffs which can all be changed at any time: the Relic buff in Act 2, the Goddess buff in Act 4, and Orbala's boon in Interlude 2. If you found this video helpful, please let me know and consider liking the video. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day, Exiles. Bye!